play this. These are my brothers. You can jam with them. Yeah.
This
all
I
right.
could play.
That's good.
Clearly, we were having a guitar talk. The guitar guys were on before the movie guys, talking about music. But now we're shifting gears to the movie guys.
Yeah.
Everybody, Paul Preston here with another TMG interview. We're taking the name TMG from TMZ, the movie guys TMG, and now we'll do interviews that actually mean something a little substantial. For this show, I'm welcoming an actor with a remarkable... Oh, and Karen is here.
I'm here. Hello.
Last minute addition to the interview. Good to have you.
I'm excited.
But we're having an actor with a remarkable career in TV and film that includes projects like The Big Lebowski, True Grit 2010, and the television show Prison Break. I'm excited to get into what makes a long livelihood in TV and film, although I imagine it has something to do with starting with a rich stage career. Please welcome Leon Russom.
Oh, my.
All right, that is huge applause.
Right.
You started on stage, yeah?
Yeah, I did. I was in college, and I was asked. I broke my ankle, and was asked to play a character in an old comedy called The Solid Gold Cadillac, who was an athlete with a broken ankle.
Typecasting?
And yeah, you might say.
Did you think, well, I have to break my ankle every time I want a part?
Well, what happened was I got bitten by the bug, and the director then asked me to do Death of a Salesman and play Biff. So I did that, and the local professional company, no one remembers, but back in the 60s and 70s, virtually every city of any size had a resident theater company, and they would hire actors from New York and Los Angeles, and they would come in and they would do a season, 8 plays.
The same actors would come and do the season?
Right.
Wow.
That'd be a great gig.
You would sign on for all the various roles that you would play in each show.
Because I grew up in Oneonta, New York, which is upstate in New York, and they would bring up, because it's 3 hours away, they'd bring up people for a show,
right?
But not for a season. That would be something.
Yes, you could make a living doing this. People did.
Acting, make a living acting.
In the old days.
You heard it here, folks.
But I went to work and was the low man on the totem pole. I made $15 a week, and I did that for about 3 years, and by that time I knew that I was going to have to do something about the draft. That's another thing we used to have.
Ah, that's right.
That every young man had to serve in the Army unless your name was Trump. And
may I just say to all the actors out there who are going, "Wow, I don't have a new car. My car is 3 years old." This is paying your dues, ladies and gentlemen. $15 a week, right? Yeah, that's.
And then the older character actors got me drunk one night, and I was so hungover. I'd never had a hangover before, and I was trying to go to work on the bus, and I kept getting sick. But even when there was nothing left in me, I kept getting sick. And so I finally had to call and go, I'm not going to be there. And the managing director called me in and dressed me down, and then said he was going to dock me, like $10 or something. And I said, I only make $15. And he went, what? And promptly raised my salary to $45.
There you go.
So I thought I was in heaven.
Hi.
So I did that for those 3 years. And then when the draft came up, I was told that I was going to go to drama school. And I was told that if I went to drama school, it was like going to automotive mechanics school, because they didn't offer a degree. I couldn't get a deferment.
Ah, from the draft.
Right. So I
draft
said,
come at me, you know what I would do? Break another ankle.
So I said, what do I do? And they said, well, you can join the Army. And I went, no, that's 3 years. That's not 2. And so they said, well, you can volunteer for the draft. And I said, what's that? And they just took my number and put it first. And so I did my 2 years, got out in Germany, and
Thank you, by the way, as much as I goofed about the ankle. Anyone who served.
Yeah, I think that's so brave.
But I went to I went across the water to England and auditioned for the Royal Academy, and I got in. But when I went there, I discovered that there was a new school that had Laurence Olivier, Peter Brook, Peter Hall, all these idols of mine on the board. And so I auditioned for them too, and I wound up going to it. It was called the London Drama Centre. It's now the theatre department of the University of London. So I did 2 years there, came back, went to the same theater that I'd been at before. An agent saw me there, brought me to New York, and I was understudying Ian McKellen in about 3 months.
That is fantastic.
Wow. So I got very lucky.
Yeah. Well, Karen and I are going to London for the first time next month.
Mm-hmm.
McKellen's doing his swan song in Shakespeare there now. King
is he?
Lear. $225 a ticket. It's like a once in a lifetime thing. It's like, I want to go, but $225 a ticket. I mean, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
The legend in his final outing in Shakespeare, but
Right.
I don't
So
think we can pull it off.
Being that you were understudying, you get to see him perform all the time.
Yeah. And I remember I was probably all of 24. Ian was around 27, 28. And after the first preview, he got an applause on his exit. And he came out and he went to the director, "I can kill that exit applause if you like." And the next night, he just changed the timing ever so slightly, and no one applauded.
You mean when he left the stage, but the story's still continuing, not his, right? Is that what you're talking about? Or
Like at the end of the act, you mean?
At the end of his final exit, as opposed
so
to the
not
end
the
of the
bows.
play. Oh, no.
Right, so
Wow.
Not the curtain call.
wow, and he manipulated the crowd.
Right.
Wow, that's pretty
And
cool.
I went, how can you be that young and know that much?
Wow.
And it was Ian McKellen, Ian McShane, and one of the great actresses ever, Dame Eileen Atkins, who you might know from The Dresser.
With Tom Courtenay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she had taken over for Judi Dench, who had done it with the two boys in London.
Wow.
And so that was how I got started. And because of equity at the time, they were going to play for 7 weeks, and then we would take over if there was a run. Those of us who were understudying. And of course, what happened was that another equity problem came up where they didn't like the Brits coming over at all.
Oh.
So we wound up having to close the show in about 2 weeks.
Well, but they didn't want the British leads. You could have come and done it as an American, as the understudy.
Yeah,
but
there was just a huge resentment for the English coming over and
That's
taking
a
over
bummer.
Broadway. And,
right. Okay.
and that sort of thing goes on all the time. Where
Absolutely. Can we go to the West End? Can American actors do the West End without problems?
You have to prove that you are essential to the show. Our criteria is that if you seem artistically essential to the show, you can come over. Theirs is if you seem economically essential to the show. So only stars can go to London.
Because they're going to bring in that box office.
Right.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so that was what all the hullabaloo was about, was that there's an inequity there that they didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born? Did all this seem far-fetched, or did it seem like it's attainable? Some people start in the middle of a desert
Right.
town or in the middle of the woods or something, and they see something like the trajectory your career had as unattainable. How about you?
I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I might have been the last kid to be able to live a sort of Huckleberry Finn kind of life, because it's on a river, and there were caves and all that sort of thing with nature, And my father died when I was very young, and my mother was quite ill. So I wound up in, people called it an orphanage, but it was a charitable institution that the Methodist Church had put together. And I spent 3 years there. Then my mother was afraid that she might die and we'd be left there. So my sister and I came to California, and we lived with an aunt and uncle. Then they had health problems, so we wound up going back to Arkansas, and then somehow wound up in Memphis. And I don't know. There was a whole world of us who, when we saw James Dean, wanted to be James Dean, you know. That meant, I guess, you'd be a movie star, sort of. That's a byproduct of being James Dean.
You just wanted to be
We
James
just-
Dean, not
we
any
just-
of his characters.
We just thought he was cool.
That's
you know.
awesome. Okay.
And so I always had an interest in it. But everything changed for me when I began to read. And we moved around so much that I had trouble making friends, so I would read. And I became fascinated with the idea of being a novelist. And that's what I thought that I was going to do. But when I was offered the chance to act when I was in college, to come to this professional theater, there's something about 8 o'clock you have to do it. A novelist can put off even beginning
Yes.
forever.
You're right. And also, as an actor, after about 11:15 is the longest I think I've ever had to be on stage. It's over. You're able to put it away
Right.
and feel like you've done it.
Right.
Unlike
Yeah.
a novel.
No, doesn't work that way.
No.
No. And then it picks up where the story began, where I first started telling you about these professional people seeing me and so
Yeah.
forth.
So this whole decade's career in theater, is there a dream role still for you?
It's hard to say. I always thought that I wanted to do that. I deeply wanted to do King Lear, and I deeply wanted to do Samuel Beckett's Endgame, and I've done both of them now.
Huh.
And I just finished doing The Tempest, which was, this is going to sound like heresy, but it's a much more difficult role than King Lear. And I didn't know that until I went to work on it. But just the sheer energy output, the athleticism of
Prospero? I see.
yeah, he is, in the first 4 scenes, introduces all the characters, but doesn't give them a chance to talk. He talks non-stop. And the way that I do Shakespeare, it requires such rapidity that it's like running a marathon. And so oddly enough, as much as I wanted to play those other 2 parts, I'm beginning to think Prospero is probably the best, or at least the most challenging.
It's still out there for you.
I just did it.
Oh, you just did it.
You
Oh,
just
just
did it.
did it.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
thought
that's
you
what he
were
was saying.
And
saying
I
it was.
I was
thought you were
shocked.
saying. I looked at it and I went, forget it.
No, I was-
You're running around the whole show.
I was shocked to find
I've
out
been doing this
that
for decades. I want to sit back and be, Theseus and just laugh at the rude mechanicals all night.
No, I was just shocked to find out that it was that difficult.
Gotcha.
Because Lear is so. I mean, they're all those wonderful words, but you can. The emotional logic of it is so clear that you just follow your nose. Whereas with The Tempest, you have to really work your butt off to make it work. And of course, I promptly went from that, where I had pneumonia during the run, and it got very bizarre. But within 2 weeks, I started work on what I'm doing now, and I look like this because I'm playing what one of my Whittier castmates calls the Buddhist Gabby Hayes. It's a farmhand who either is or thinks he's the last cowboy. And so it's about as far from Shakespeare as you can get. And we're doing it out of doors on a ranch
Oh, cool.
in Sunland, and so people have to drive for 20 minutes to get there. And it's all about the droughts that are attacking California.
So it's an original piece?
But yes.
Oh, great. Okay.
By a gentleman named Octavio Solis, wonderful playwright. And I'm I don't know how to describe it. But the Buddhist Gabby Hayes is a very good way of saying it, but because he can sort of see everything that's going on, but he's very old, and he doesn't think straight. And
But is Zen about it, I guess?
yeah, well, because he can see the overall, and all the other people can't.
Okay.
And gradually, he becomes kind of mythic. You're not really sure that he was there,
Oh, cool.
which is kind of fun to do. And that's me up to date.
Well, I'm going to jump even further to the present, because this
Please
is your
do.
new play you're doing. The new film, actually should have mentioned at the top of the show, is called The Midnighters, brand new to all number of formats. It's out there on Blu-ray and streaming on Amazon, also streaming on Vudu and Google Play and many other platforms. So you can go ahead and watch this neo-noir film that I saw last night, and we'll play a little clip from it here to get people up to date with your character.
Wonderful.
Your first visit to me each month, you fill out a report of all your activities from the previous month. Make sure it's accurate, legible, sign it. Whenever we have a scheduled supervision, you sign it on the sheet in the reception area, let the security guard know you're here. Whenever you enter the building, you're going to be searched. Come by yourself, don't bring friends, don't bring family. You're going to do urinalysis, you familiar with that? You can't leave a sample in a timely fashion. It's grounds for arrest or revocation of your probation or parole. I'm going to be visiting you at your home and your job. It's my right to do so anytime, day or night. If you're arrested...
There won't be any more arrests.
Look, it's a hard thing to get your head around, you understand?
I think so.
35 years. It's a long time. Most guys looking at that kind of time, they never get out, and the few that do, it's a very hard time readjusting. This is not 1978 anymore.
I know.
Now, of course, most of that scene was done by, what was the actor's name?
Oh,
He was
he's
great.
a great friend of mine. The first time that I did King Lear, I didn't play Lear. I played Gloucester, and Larry played Lear.
Larry,
his name is Larry Cedar.
Larry Cedar, that's right.
You may remember him as a character named Leon on the series Deadwood. He's all over television. You can't miss Larry.
Yeah, he certainly looked familiar. You know, he's in the category of that guy, right?
Right.
It's that guy.
Which,
I know that guy.
Which is what I keep reading in the reviews I am.
Yeah.
And
But now, you're the lead, because
Well,
it's just
yeah.
setting up your character who then we follow through the whole film, just out of prison. And go ahead and tell us a little more about the plot.
well, the plot is, you, in my mind, you think that you're about to watch, who is it that in the Shawshank Redemption is let out of prison and can't
Brooks.
cope?
Yeah.
Oh, Brooks.
Right.
James Whitmore, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It looks
Okay.
like it's going to be that kind of thing if you made a whole film about that. And I liken it to the neo-realist Italians who made all those things about poverty and old age and dislocation right after World War II. Rossellini and De Sica and those people. But we sandbag the audience because it doesn't go there. That's where it looks like it's going. But little by little, I realize I'm being stalked. And I'm being stalked by my son, who the last time I saw him, he was a toddler. And he's gotten himself in a bit of trouble. He's a cyber criminal. But he thinks that he can get himself out of trouble if he can rob a bank. And he's connected with the Russian mafia, like our president. And he, I see that he's in over his head. And so I'm really getting involved in it because I want to have his back. And the reason that they need me is that it's a huge vault, but inside the bank vault is an old safe from the 1920s, and only I can open
That's
it.
your specialty.
Oh, that's the trick.
And of course, I immediately go, why don't you just take the thing out of the safe and take it to your house, and you can do it as slowly as you like. And then they point out that there's a little chip in it that can be traced, and they have to explain to me what's going on with...
Today's
Oh,
technology.
right, because you wouldn't know GPS.
Because I don't know about GPS.
Yeah.
That's just something
that's amazing.
new to me. And I won't tell you how it turns out.
But I will tell you this, as one who just saw it. This is my kind of movie because when I go to a film, I'm willing. I mean, I may be a rarity. I like to think I'm not, but I think I am. The guy who will just give myself, like, I'm coming to watch this movie.
Mhm.
You got 2 hours, go. Or 2.5, or whatever. I'll give you the length of the movie. So if it's a slow burn, which this is,
Right.
I'll stay with you.
Right.
So I want to tell people who may think the first half hour is laying out a lot, explaining a lot, and living in your character a lot. stay with it because the last half hour is awesome. Because, you know what I mean? So sometimes the slow burn, will fizzle. This is a slow burn that just lights up at the end and is
wonderful.
is really cool.
Wonderful. I'm glad it has that effect.
Yeah, and I want to mention some other names. Gregory Sims plays your son.
Greg,
and I thought he was great opposite you.
Yeah, Greg's a wonderful young man. He, when I don't know, how can I explain this? We're members of the same theater company, and Julian had never heard his script. Julian Fort, the director-writer, and he had never heard his script aloud. So I went to Greg and I said, if you organize a reading and get, cast all these parts, you'll get to have an extended audition for this part.
Brilliant.
And Julian saw him and instantly took to him. And oddly enough, I was doing it for Greg, but I also wasn't sure that it would work because in my mind, because he was a cyber criminal, I had a kind of nerdy guy in my head. Mm-hmm. And Greg, he looks like Bruce Springsteen. I mean, young Bruce Springsteen. Mm-hmm. And
that's true. I hadn't seen that, but now you mention it.
So I wasn't sure that it was a good fit. I knew he was a good actor, but I didn't know he was physically a good fit. But Julian jumped at it. And
as a viewer, I didn't go, hey, what is... I've heard that before, though, from crazy, particular L.A. audiences who see a movie with Ben Kingsley and a young actor, and they go, that young actor didn't have the nose that Ben Kingsley has. It's like, well, clearly the movie's failing because you're thinking about that as opposed to something else, but also let it go. Just let the characters breathe for a second.
I also like the fact that you kind of worked as a casting director in that instance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, very clever.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted Julian to hear it. So that he would, if he needed to do another draft, he would know, Mm-hmm. Though, of course, there's no visuals. It's just sitting around a table.
No, I don't know Julian, but he and I have a mutual friend, Paul Osborne, who's been on the show many times. And so I looked up Julian online just to see, because Paul was telling me that he had seen this film at various festivals and things. And I'm going to look up Julian. He's got 3 credits. I think he was 20 years ago. He did something like a small.
This is news to me.
His credits are director, writer, producer, The Midnighters. So the guy
badass.
Came out of nowhere and made this film that is quite accomplished.
It's not only out of nowhere. Julian is an astonishing creature. Ever since Big Lebowski came out, I get free coffee every time I step into a Starbucks. Because everyone under 30, and most baristas are under 30, loves Lebowski. They they grew up on it. They watch it all the time. And so I'm very often in a Starbucks, and people get me involved in a conversation about film. And one day, this fellow joined in who seemed incredibly knowledgeable. And we got to talking. I think we were talking about Kubrick. And then the next thing I knew, we were meeting nightly at the Starbucks closing time. And then we would jabber, and then we would jabber some more after they locked us out. And he came to me one day and he said, I've got a film script that I would like you to, if I can get it going, I'd like you to play this fellow at the end. And this guy had like a 3-page monologue at the end of this film, and it was a kind of slasher film is what I call them, though it was more psychological than it wasn't Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It wasn't that kind of thing. And so I said, sure, I'll do it because I like you, and I don't need to read it, I'll just do it. And then maybe he heard that I'm not really fond of that kind of film. And the next thing I knew, about 6 months later, he said, I've written a film for you.
Oh, wow.
And he had heard me say that, he asked me what I thought was a subject that was interesting to me. And I said, I think fatherhood and the responsibilities of it are very important to me. I can't stand the idea of abused children. Drives me nuts. And so that's how he came up with this. The fact that we both love Robert Mitchum movies and film noir in general. And then this whole thing of father-son, which was all him, because I said that once. I don't even remember it, but I've heard him say that I said it. And Julian is a security guard at Paramount. He works there every day. And he wrote this script in his time off. He financed it by going to various friends and various family members. And I think what would be his legacy, what his parents would leave him, he got them to sort of advance him now.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, you mentioned that before we started recording. I'm like, I need to hear that story on the air.
Oh, that's great.
And
That is cojones right
and
there.
so he finally got together $80,000, and we had 2 weeks to shoot. And I had no idea what a rental for equipment is, what it costs. I had no idea what it costs for locations. They charge independent people. You want to rent a diner, it's going to cost you the same thing it cost Michael Bay.
Yeah.
And he's got a $200 million budget, and we have $80,000. And it took 5 years to go from script to shooting. Then it took another 5 years from shooting to release, because he was going all over town about the things that you do in post, and I don't understand all this, but I know about color adjustment, but there are evidently 15 or 20 processes that film must go through after it's edited. And he literally would show the film to people, and they would go, "I'll do it for free.
Oh, wow.
I like this film, I'll do it for free." And we got our music that way. We got all kinds of things that way. There's one young man who every Saturday morning for 2.5 years would sit with Julian, and they would edit. And fortunately, the finished product got him a job as one of the editors at Walt Disney.
Oh, good. Okay, I love when that happens.
So he got something from
yeah,
it.
because he was
And-
doing it because he loved it, and then something good. I feel he attracted that to himself by giving him himself. That's great.
Right. And so that's how it all happened.
Wow.
And I desperately want it to make its money back so that Julian can pay all of his friends and family back, and so that he can make another film
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
that doesn't take 10 years.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good calling card to speed that process up next time he's interested.
right? I hope so.
You know?
I hope so.
How old was he when he started this whole process?
Right around 40.
Oh my gosh, good for him.
So
Okay.
he's probably 46, 47,
Good for
somewhere
him.
in there now.
All right.
Now, what is that? Now, we talked about all this time in theater, but film and TV now for you has been around 30 years. So someone comes along who, without any real direct, I understand how you friended Julian, how you trusted him, and how merely conversations with him, you got
Right.
the idea this is going to be a good film. But then when you get on the set and then direct, how do you work together? Do you ever have to bring something that he's not talking about to the production, or do you talk things out and come to a mutual understanding about how a scene is going to play out, or how does it all?
Well, we
work?
had to work so fast. Like Larry Cedar, the fellow
2
that,
weeks, yeah.
that I was talking about, that plays the parole officer. We had someone else, an actor named Sam Anderson, was written in to do that, and something happened, and I called Larry 2 nights before he shot and asked him I said, "You're immensely overqualified for this part, but please." And he said, "Where do I park and what do I wear?" And he showed up and he shot his entire role in 1 day.
Yeah.
So this is a long preamble to answering your question, but there wasn't time for discussion.
Just a lot of trust.
We just had to have a whole lot of secondary actors that were good, and he trusted that I knew what we were after, because we had 5 years to sit and
Oh, that's true. Your
Kibitz.
pre-production was 5 years.
Right.
That's good.
You better come to the set prepared. Come on.
And he had tailored it to what he thought was my sensibility, you know. So we might quibble about. There's a better way to say this, I think, Julian. Could you come up with something, or can I? You know, we had a handful of those, but not much. Mostly,
right.
it was just doing it, and.
Well, again, I think the word I said before, I'll stand by. It's a very accomplished film, especially for someone without, a page and a half full of credits.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty impressed in that respect. And I want to make room for one more actor shout-out, Costa Ronan,
Yeah.
who played one of the Russians.
Well,
who
Costa
great.
is, at the moment, probably the best known of us all because he was on The Americans and it hit big.
Mm-hmm.
That was after he had worked with us. But he's an amazing creature. He's a Ukrainian who has traveled the world on a motorcycle, and it's very intense. And he and I were the only smokers in the film, so we spent a lot of time going off in corners and sharing cigarettes.
It's a lot of bonding time there.
And my son, who plays a virtually silent part but is killed in it, idolized Costa. He thought Costa was cool. I think most people think Costa's cool.
I think I know who you're talking about in the film, and yeah, they did a lot of scenes together.
Right.
So, all right, so let me jump now. So once again, Midnighters, the Midnighters, because there's a Midnighters out there.
Oh,
so it's
yeah,
the
it's a-
Midnighters,
You
and
gotta
you'll
put
find
the,
it.
if you're going to stream it, you got to put the article in front of it.
Yeah. So again, that's Amazon, Vudu, Google Play, everywhere out there where you're going to watch a movie. But let's jump to another big film you've had out this year, A Quiet Place you were in. I'd like to play one of your great lines of dialogue from that film.
Very well done.
That's
was
it.
fantastic. That's great.
Well, otherwise, the movie is A Quiet Place.
But
You
it was,
come along and
it was quite articulate, didn't you think?
I thought.
Yeah, and you held it for so long.
I think
And for those of you
I
who,
think they probably reinforced it a little bit, in post.
for those of you unaware, that of course is the great John Krasinski, Emily Blunt alien invasion movie that came out in April, where it's actually years after, or a year at least. I can't remember exactly. 3 years after the aliens actually came, and we now learn to live in a world where if you make noise, the aliens will find you. So
That's true.
clearly, you wanted the aliens to
You
find
were
you.
found,
with
I'm
that.
guessing.
That's it.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me too, because I haven't had an agent or a manager for quite a while now, and I've focused mostly on theater where I don't need one, and all of a sudden my manager, who I had discharged, called me and said, it looks like they want you to do a film that John Krasinski, and I said, who's John Krasinski? And she said, have you seen The Office? And I went, oh, that John Krasinski. And I read the script, and it was kick-ass.
Yeah.
I thought, oh man, this is a wonderful script. And I had just finished doing Lear, so I had a beard out to here and the long hair that you see I've kept. And so John said, could you send me a photograph? And so I Skyped myself to him, and then instantly there was an email back going, welcome to the cast if you're willing.
Wow.
And then I found out that John, like so many people, his college dorm was had Lebowski playing 24 hours a day.
Of course it did. Of course it did.
And so he was a fan of the film, and when they were seeing actors, and they couldn't find anyone that pushed the right buttons for him, and so he then went, what about that guy? What does he look like now? And it was just pure serendipity that I happened to have all of that. And then when I got on the set, I knew we were making a really, really, really good film, because Krasinski is, I don't know what he's the next, To me, he's like baby Orson Welles, because he can act, he can write, he can direct.
But now he seems like the next action star with the Jack
That-
Ryan series. So
that
he seems
too.
to fit
And-
whatever mold you need, because it's comedy, action, drama, horror.
And he also got to marry Emily Blunt.
That's pretty good.
That's doing very well.
That's my response to that.
But he on the set, the moment because of course he plays the lead in it, we're sitting next to each other at makeup, and he told me that he was fond of the Big Lebowski and so forth. And then we started talking about Roger. Gosh, now I always get his name confused. Deakins.
Deakins. Oh, Roger Deakins.
Yeah, I get confused with there's a Roger Donaldson who is
Director
a
for
New
No Way
Zealand director that I worked with.
No Way Out, correct?
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a sec. Roger
And-
Deakins, greatest cinematographer,
and so
perhaps
we-
of all time.
so
Now
the-
an Oscar winner, thank God, for Blade Runner.
Thank goodness. So the two of us were like fanboys talking about Roger. And we never talked about what we were doing. And then I get on set, and he's directing the young boy and playing with him at the same time. And they're having something to do under a tree. And then I watched him go cut and stride off, and without so much as changing a cap, he suddenly went from actor intensely doing this to director, now looking for the next location. And the one thing that he told me that was wonderful, at one point in the tiny little scenelet, when the little boy has seen me, I looked in his eyes and went to make him go away, because I was going to scream, because I'm suiciding. And John came up to me and he went, "You don't even see the boy. You are so devastated by what life's done to you that nothing, you can only be involved in yourself." And that was enough. That's all he needed to tell me. I fell in like 4 different directions, depending on, because it was going to be in post, the monster flying in, and he wanted those options. And that was it. But I knew from watching his confidence and from the fact that he had written the script. There were 2 young men who wrote a script, but he wrote the script. And of course, his acting. I knew that it was going to be a really, really good film, and that he's got an incredible future. I did not know that it was going to go to #1 and then fall out when an action movie came back, and then come roaring back and be #1 again. That just never occurred to me.
Yeah, it's that rare movie that has legs nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he did a great job directing those children, too. You talk about a moment there, taking with the kid. I mean, I grew up in an era when kids were the death of movies.
Oh,
and
and these-
somewhere in the last 10 years, kids overall, from Tom Holland and The Impossible and Spider-Man, to the
Even
kids from
Stranger
Moonrise
Things.
Kingdom to Stranger Things. There's so many great child actors out there giving authentic and quality performances. I'm glad this era has replaced the previous.
Right. And John, in his interviews, will tell you he learned a lot from them. The little girl actually is deaf.
Yeah, I knew that.
And so he learned a great deal about what the world is like from her, what that world is like. And the one bad thing was that I didn't get to meet Emily Blunt.
Oh, that is a bad thing.
I got to see her.
You're dumb.
I got to see her in a van going to work as I was in a van coming back to work about 3 times. But we didn't have scenes together, so there was no reason for us to see each other.
She is fantastically talented.
And drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah, there's that. But let's go. I'm time jumping all over the place. Now we're going to go back to the beginning. One of the first films you were in. You mentioned No Way Out,
Right.
and I just want to bring this up quickly because it's one of the more hack things to say when you're interviewing someone. What was it like working with? But I have to ask because you're talking about one of my favorite actors who has ever lived, and I see you worked with him twice, also in Behind Enemy Lines. You got any Hackman stories? Gene Hackman is simply
Hackman.
the greatest, most malleable, and authentic actor on film that I think
Well, he saw him in the van while he was going one direction. No.
I remember the first time I saw him, which was in Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the meeting of the two brothers when Warren Beatty and he first saw each other from a distance, and then they wind up in a huge bear hug. The interaction between them was so real, and the love was so palpable that I had to find out who this actor was. And but I didn't work with him until No Way Out, and of course I have no scenes with him, so I didn't actually work with him. But I do remember that the first day I was shooting, he was not shooting that day, but I watched the rushes from the day before, which of course I wasn't in. But he had just learned of he had just realized that he had maybe destroyed his career by the accident which killed the girl.
Mm-hmm. In the plot.
In the plot.
He didn't kill a girl in it.
But he clearly they wanted him to cry. And that day, that wasn't happening. And I watched him do all the physiological things that you would do if you were crying. That sort of thing, right? And I went, my God, you don't really have to force yourself to do anything. You can, even with the film, because we always thought, stage actors always think film is like absolutely real and therefore not necessarily paced. The editor will do that. Mm-hmm. Whereas on stage, we have to do all that for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I was watching him convince an audience, knowing that the editor was going to help him, convince an audience that he was in tears when he wasn't. And I thought, oh, okay, he really is as good as I always thought he was.
Well, next year he gave the best performance, I think, of his career in Mississippi Burning. I know he won Oscars for Unforgiven and Popeye Doyle, but Mississippi Burning performance is just beyond everything.
He's also wonderful in The Conversation.
Oh, we could go on. Good
and
Lord.
the film about Princess Leia's life.
Oh, Postcards from the Edge.
Right.
Yeah, he's great in that.
Yeah.
Right. All he had to do was be Mr. Charm, but he was Mr. Charm to the max.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that side of him before. But there's an interesting thing. He came in the day that I was shooting, and he's a huge man, very big man, very imposing. And he came in like a chastised little boy. He had gone to a automobile road race and was caught on film doing it. And in the contract, you can't do things like that because, God forbid, anything should happen to you, and they would have to scrap everything you were in. Mm-hmm. And so he was going, I only drove the pace car. I wasn't really driving. And it was so weird to see this enormous man. So his mama had just slapped his hands, And then I saw him briefly in the Czech Republic when we were shooting the other film that you mentioned.
Behind Enemy Lines.
Right, Behind Enemy Lines. And, there's a seal between two doors on most studios where you open one door and when it closes, then you can open the other door so that sound can't get back and forth, right? Well, he came, I had just opened the outer door and he came storming through the other door and past me. And first of all, it was like a great whale that just came at me. But also he was clearly irate about something. And I just backed against the wall. I didn't make any attempt to talk to him. So in the film, we are like juxtaposed, but we never really worked together.
Huh.
His retirement made me sad. He hasn't made a film in many years,
Mm-hmm.
but fans still love him to where he agreed to take pictures occasionally. You won't see many, but he just took a
Right.
picture recently with somebody. Hey, he looks great. Looks to him like, hey, he's gonna be mid-80s at this point.
Mhm.
He's got such a great. I mean, the great part of it is the gift that keeps on giving. I still haven't seen at least 20 of his movies,
Right.
and so I have that to look forward to.
And, you know, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall. Robert Duvall, and Dustin Hoffman were roommates at the Pasadena Playhouse. And I don't know that, other than Buster Keaton when he was alone, I can't imagine that much talent in one room.
Either that or like one of the writing meetings with Raiders of the Lost Ark, or that crazy house where John Milius and De Palma and Spielberg and Lucas all used to hang out in.
Or the
beach.
writing staff for Your Show of Shows,
No,
which
with
was Woody
Reiner.
Allen,
Yeah.
Carl Reiner,
Brooks.
Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Sid Caesar.
Neil Simon.
Yeah, the whole gang. Rest in peace. All right, well, let's get to Lebowski. All right, because this the Coen brothers love casting you as a sheriff. They did it the same thing in True Grit.
Right.
But now Lebowski, let me refresh everyone who doesn't know this classic scene with the dude.
Mr. Treehorn draws a lot of water in this town. You don't draw shit, Lebowski. Now, we got a nice, quiet little beach community here, and I aim to keep it nice and quiet. So let me make something play. I don't like you sucking around bothering our citizens, Lebowski. I don't like your jerk-off name. I don't like your jerk-off face. I don't like your jerk-off behavior, and I don't like you. Jerk-off.
Now, the key to the Coen brothers is their rock-solid script, right? Is it true that there's just no improvisation and none is needed? Or do they work with actors?
It's very funny because it looks as though their scenes are improvised because
So loose, yeah.
because they hire excellent actors and they write very well. I have visions of them staying up late at night, talking and talking and talking and going, what if we, and then what if we, and then what, and then on top of that, maybe we, and then the way that they would say it would be, yeah, but that word doesn't fit. Let's put that word there.
Yeah, like arguing for an hour, the or
Right.
What, like
Right.
getting it till they got it just right.
The one thing, there was a funny thing where Jeff was alone with John Goodman. I heard this story later. Goodman had worked with them a number of times already, and so Jeff turned to him and said, "Where are the colored pages?" Because every
right.
time you write a draft or a rewrite, you stick in a different color. And John went, "There are no color pages. They write it, we do it." And
That was a good impersonation of John as well.
John's one of my oldest and dearest friends.
Oh, that's cool.
When we were both not making money, we somehow found a way to get beers together. And I experienced it. They don't direct you a lot, except in terms of movement. But they are meticulous about their scripts. And we did a perfectly good take that any other director in the entire world would have accepted of what you just heard. But I said, keep out Lebowski, keep out of my quiet little beachfront community. And Ethan came up to me and he went, "There's no front. It's just beach." And I went, "Yes, sir."
Wow.
So the answer to my question is yes. They are on you for script particulars because they probably labor over it.
I have a question for you because I love your delivery of the lines in that scene, but I especially love you just hitting him in the head with a coffee cup. How did you guys block that? I mean, it bounces off his head.
Right.
What was it? A prop coffee cup? How did that happen? I don't understand.
It was styrofoam,
Okay.
but it had a smooth ceramic-like coating.
Yeah.
And so the trick was, like, I wanted to really throw it.
Yeah.
Like I would throw a baseball. And we found that it would catch the wind.
Oh,
Or-
because it was
not-
lightweight.
Not wind, but it would catch the air.
Yeah.
And, I mean, because it's creating its own wind. And so accuracy was a problem there. So they finally had me sort of throw it shoving.
Just shove it. Yeah.
And then it clunked him
It's
right
so
in the
funny.
head. There is one thing that that at the time I was quite proud of. They actually consulted me about a shot,
Oh, that's a big
which
deal.
I'd already seen their other work.
If you're listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, his eyes are wide. Explaining this because it is an
It's a
unusual
big deal,
and
yeah.
big deal.
When after I'd knocked him out of his chair,
I love when you just push him backwards.
Right.
That's hysterical too.
they asked me, "Where would you see this from?" And I said, "Well, I think I would shoot from his point of view up at me."
Yep.
But now that I think about it, it's a bit of a cliche shot that we've
Right.
seen a number of times.
Makes you look large in the
and
frame, etc.
Yeah.
And it causes a kind of fisheye effect. But it's only slight, so in a way it's kind of good because it makes him really monstrous for
Yeah.
a moment. But I'm sure that they already had that shot in mind and that they were just being courteous.
And also, Lebowski's drunk. He's still hungover at that point, so his point of view could be fish-eyed if we were
Right.
looking through his eyes.
Absolutely.
That's so
Absolutely.
cool. Yeah.
And Jeff is, he's a treasure.
Good, because I think he just is wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He, when I came to work on True Grit, Jeff has a habit, a wonderful habit that he shares with Lee Marvin, bless his heart, which is that the moment that he sees you, he goes, "Hi, I'm Jeff." Like you don't know that,
Yeah, right.
right? But it puts people at ease.
Yeah.
And when I came to work on True Grit, he was finishing shooting for the day when I came in for a makeup approval or something like that. And so we were alone in the makeup trailer. And all of the makeup people were gone too because they were on set working on Dakin Matthews, the fellow who played the horse salesman. And he looked at, he said, "Hi, I'm Jeff." And I said, "Yeah, Jeff, I know." And he heard my voice.
Oh, yeah.
He heard my voice because I'm under a lot of hair. And then I don't know his friend. He has a companion that stays with him most of the time. I guess he's a personal assistant. I don't know. But he's also a friend. And he suddenly screamed his name and he went, "Get in here. That son of a bitch that hit me with the cup is here." And that was great fun.
It was the voice. Your voice is very recognizable. It's great. Do you get to do voiceover work? Do you ever?
I did one campaign years ago, and then because I was on a soap opera and doing nighttime theater, I just didn't pursue it. And I really should have, because when you get older, that's like an annuity.
Yeah. You can't
Because
outgrow that.
nobody sees your face. They don't know how old you are. And I have friends who have made enormous amounts of money. William Shallert, who I don't know if you guys know him, but he played every small town mayor in the history of movies. He was Doogie Howser's father, I think. He was in the Flying Nun. He's a kind of legendary character actor out here. But he was also the king of voiceovers, and he made $5 or $6 million a year in the 70s.
Oh, that's good.
Just from
really
voice
good.
work.
Yeah.
That's 70s money, kids. Well, listen, if you need to see more of Leon, of course, go see The Midnighters, but also Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. We didn't even get to that. Or you were describing your life in Arkansas, and it sounded like the moving around, and it sounded like the life of Huck Finn, but you can see you in The Adventures of Huck Finn from back in the 90s. Was that the Courtney B. Vance, Elijah Wood one?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I got to tell you one more story.
I'll take that
Sure,
story.
okay.
This is about Elijah. Elijah was the most amazing thing to me, because you hear horror stories about kid actors, and he was 11, I think, when he shot that. And I flew in to shoot one scene, and I had just had periodontal surgery. So I was in great pain. I was in cocaine and, not cocaine, codeine.
Codeine. Big difference.
I did not
Big
say cocaine. I
difference.
said codeine.
Of course, let the record show.
And there was a moment when things got testy on the set, and you could feel tension in the air. And Elijah started doing his version of Dana Carvey's version of the first Bush,
Oh, fantastic.
an 11-year-old kid. And he had everybody in stitches. And when he realized that he had dissipated the tension, he quit. And I went, my God, he's 11 years old.
And then he could roll again.
And he knows how to run a set. The set belonged to him. It was just astonishing. And then when I finished my work, he came up to me and he said, "Thank you very much for doing our movie. And would you really look after your teeth?"
Oh,
Wow.
what a great kid.
Sweet boy.
That's an
That's
underrated film,
great.
too. Underrated film. You should go and see if you haven't. Or you could see Leon in Silver Bullet, Double Dragon, The Phantom, Men of Honor, and of course, a huge role on Prison Break, but we're not the TV guys, so we didn't go on about that. Although it is funny to think, like, hey, Leon was in Mission Impossible and The Equalizer, and it was, so tell me some Tom Cruise and Denzel stories. No.
No, the TV show.
Mission Impossible and The Equalizer.
That's amazing.
So,
Were you in Quincy? Did I see that? I don't know if
I probably was. I
Oh
don't
my
remember.
God! I was looking at your IMDb and I was like, "That is badass."
Just so you know, I'm 76. I'm not that old. I did the final episode of Mission Impossible.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do the previous 6 years.
Right. But the point is, there is lots out there that
Yeah.
you've done. Check the IMDb and go see something that he was in, because there's tons. But I will talk one last thing. We ask this of everyone who comes on the show.
Right.
What is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, God. It changes day to day. But I have a whole list of them, but let's just say.
Because often the right answer is, what's your favorite movie of all time right now?
Yeah,
And that's not wrong.
it changes.
Out of the Past.
Well, you mentioned Mitchum, right?
Yeah.
So
Out of the Past is my favorite film. Dr. Strangelove is the greatest American film.
that movie's so great. It's crazy.
And Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire. And there are a whole slew of films from the late 60s. Bergman, Truffaut, Fellini, that formed me. Because they were what I saw when I was forming my notion of what art is. But and then I have secret what are they called? Secret pleasures that you don't tell people.
The
Guilty pleasures.
Guilty pleasures.
You might have secret pleasures.
But I have guilty pleasures that, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is just delightful, and Tombstone, which
Yeah.
I mean Val Kilmer in that just that any writer could give you a line like "I'll be your Huckleberry." I mean, it's just too good. So it ranges all over the place.
How does it feel to be in most people's favorite movie?
Yeah, we've had that mentioned in
mean,
here with guests.
So many times people love Lebowski.
Yeah.
Oh well,
200 guests. That movie must have come up at least 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Well, I
Among
told
favorites.
I told you it's gotten me 10 years of free coffee, which is kind of nice. But it also it opens doors.
Yeah.
People go. I mean, you can be.
People go, I wrote a movie for you, and it's called The Midnighters, right?
But people, oh God, I almost lost what I was going to say. It opens doors because everyone knows that movie, and so therefore they will pay attention to you long enough for you to hook them on the next job.
There you go.
And it just took me out of being that guy and being a little more, I think I might know that guy's name.
Hey, every little bit helps.
Right.
Good for you. That's
and
cool.
It's Leon Russom.
That's right. Not Russom.
Like Russell and not Rossum.
Russell.
But, and again, The Midnighters, you can check it out on Blu-ray on Amazon, or it's also streaming there, as well as Vudu and Google Play and many other streaming services. And that wraps another TMG interview. Follow us on Twitter at The Movie Guys, Facebook.com/The Movie Guys, as well as YouTube, iTunes, Instagram, and all that nonsense. We put up daily jokes, articles, links, and more. Thanks to Leon.
Yeah. Woo-hoo. Thank you.
TheMidnightersMovie.com, also for more info. Yeah. Anything else you want to plug? What's the show up in Sunland?
Yeah, the
for
play.
if you're in the LA area?
It's called A Hole in the Sky. It's by a company called Circle X, and you can find it on your internet.
Just
look up
Google
Circle
that.
X.
Circle X Theater coming, bound to be the only one
In
that comes up.
Sunland, right? So that way they can zero in Sunland,
Right.
California.
And as ever for us, you can find out everything we're up to, including reviews, articles, and more interviews. Recently, we had Kate Flannery in here. Nicholas Danes, the stuntman, called in, as did John Brewer, the British documentarian. We talked about his rock and roll documentaries, and many more at themovieguys.net. Thank you, Karen.
Yes,
Karen.
thank you. Karen.
Karen.
That's all right.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Leon. And have fun.
Karen and Leon.
Put you together, Karen.
Thank you.
Movie Guys! Hey, it's Paul from the Movie Guys.
And Karen. Oh, hi, honey.
It's Paul from the Movie Guys with Karen. And if you liked that interview, there's more where that came from. There's loads of YouTube content that you can watch and enjoy. Everything from comedy videos to interviews to full 90-minute showcasts where we preview movies, tell all sorts of jokes, and have guests. And it's all right here on YouTube. So please like this video, like our channel, subscribe to our channel.
You know what? And if you subscribe to our channel, we'll let you know where Leon lives.
I won't be living there anymore.
Damn it. Do it quick then.